Hello, good afternoon. I'm Marita Clark, the founder of Single Parent Action Network. This afternoon, we will be talking about parental alienation. With me, I have Ms. Rochelle Mohammed from the Women for Justice Foundation. She's the director of the Women Affairs. I have with me also Ms. Rachel Edmond, who is the founder and the president of Global Network for Advancement of Single Mothers. Good afternoon, ladies.
Good
Good
afternoon,
afternoon.
Arita.
Good afternoon. Well, our primary focus here at SPAN today is to look at the rights of a child. Because often we have heard people saying that one parent alienates a child from the other. But at the end of the day, a child, my apologies, has access and equal access to both parents. I will make reference to the Convention on the Rights of a Child. It speaks that, especially Article 3, that it is important that the best interest of the child should be considered, and state agencies shall consider how they treated cases with children with domestic violence and parental alienation. Recently, we saw a video circulating with a father and a mother with a conflict of access, one stating a time and the other saying that's not the time. Ms. Edmond, could you share with me at least some experiences of what your members would have shared with regard to access being denied? Or is it, in that case, if you have seen the video, was it that the child right was infringed? Enlighten me a little bit.
The child's rights would have been infringed, yes. However, um, not in the way that we think. The child's right would have been infringed by the father in this case because he would have perpetrated an assault on his mother, right? Um, in terms of what my members would have shared with me in terms of parental alienation, I rarely have cases of um, persons, you know, enduring something like that. What they normally experience is the fact that they can't get the father of their child or children to make and keep appointments to see their children. Some don't see them at all. So I don't really have a lot of persons who I know of that would have experienced parental alienation in its truest form. A lot of
Mhm.
times people think that because a mother may withhold a child from seeing the father, it's alienation. And in a lot of cases, it's not, right?
Right.
Um, sorry?
My apologies.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, it's not alienation because there are many things to consider when you're talking about alienation. You have to consider things like, is there any sort of abuse going on? Why it is the mother would feel that need to um, alienate the child. And in that case, I wouldn't use the word alienate. I would use the word protect,
Yes.
right? So there's a lot of factors that you have to consider when you're having the conversation of alienation, parental alienation. A lot of things you have to consider, right? And as I said, in my opinion, when I looked at the video, the child's rights were infringed because you have a duty as a parent to protect your child from such instances of abuse and those sorts of physical acts of violence. You have a duty to protect them from those things, even if it is from you, right? So, um, in terms of that, those are my views on that particular video that I would have seen, and in terms of what persons would have come to me sharing in terms of their experiences.
Well, I could, in my case, from a personal experience, I, at first, the I felt it for the child, I would say, because I was saying at one point in time, did both parents respect that child? Did they consider that they were both embarrassing the child? I have faced situations like that, and sometimes I was hurting deeply inside. There were instances where we had an agreement for a particular time, and when to return the child, that never occurred. So I often ask myself, how is the state or the state agencies treating with that? Miss Rochelle Mohammed, I don't know if you have had victims of domestic violence where women would have had cases where they enter your institution or ask for assistance, and somewhere along the line, the men find them and often saying that I'm here to see my child, because most time men use parental alienation to encourage, or I should say, induce or increase the violence, because the woman would have run from the violence and they would find them. Could you educate me or let me know whether that is a fact, whether there is any evidence? Is it true or not that in parental alienation, they use the children as an excuse, and the term parental alienation to do domestic violence towards the mother or father in that case?
So again, good evening to your viewers, and for your audience that don't or who are not familiar with me, I am Rochelle Mohammed. I represent the Justice for Women Foundation, where I am the Director for Women Affairs. And to answer your question, Rita, yes, we do have mothers. We have a couple fathers as well that found resources within our organization through the SOS initiative. And these parents would have been placed, a couple of them would have been placed in government institutions, safe houses actually. And at some point, there was one instance, just to vaguely put it as to not reveal too much, where the father of the child um, found where the parent was. Information was leaked, and he wanted access to his child. He didn't care too much for the liking of what the court set out. He was adamant that he's a parent and the court cannot deny him access to his child and all of that. While he was not abusive to the child, he was abusive to the parent, meaning the mother of the child. So it puts the parent on the other end in a predicament, wanting to protect themselves, wanting to protect their child, whether directly or indirectly, from the spiral of abuse. And sometimes parents find themselves wedged in a gap where they don't know what to do. They don't want to deny the child the opportunity of having an interaction with the other parent, but they also don't want to put themselves at victim front in that case where they might actually have to defend themselves. And the children end up in a banter of between parents. What that does is not just psychologically affect the child, but it puts the child in an emotional distress. It affects them in school. It affects how they relate to their peers. It even affects their physical well-being, their mental status as well. So it's a tricky topic when we talk about alienation, as Ms. Edmond, would have said. The circumstances may present itself as though it is alienation, but then when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, then you understand content and context of when you're using the word alienation. And I think that's what we need to be mindful of.
Great. Yes, please. Because in my personal experience, I remember that the father had an access period. He didn't want that period. So he took me before the court alleging that the child was missing. In such, the judge acted, I should say, unlawfully and made the child a ward of the court. So I am saying, is it that because he indicated that he's not seeing his child, quote unquote, it was that a definition of parental alienation? And was it that he used that in the court to say, I'm not seeing my child, and the court took action? I have seen in situations other than myself where the fathers use the court to make allegations of some sort, frivolous allegations, my apologies. Sometimes he would say, I'm not seeing my child and I have to make an access application. I've seen where, and I've heard it on numerous occasions, that especially when you sit in the police station, you hear all these allegations. You hear all these claims. Right? And before I go further, I have with us Ms. Chanel Clark. She's a social work final year student at USC. And she just joined in to see how, to have an insight, to have an understanding of how we present as NGOs work together. And at the end, she will give us an insight and understanding of what she gathered from our discussion. So yes, in my case, and I always refer to my case because my case is one that Ms. Edmund and I always discuss. It's very strange. And as Ms. Mitchell always said, Miss Michelle Mitchell is our communication specialist. She said, your case is always unique. And often I've been told by police officers, you don't want to get the man a child. The man wants to see his child. But on top of this parental alienation, what I have observed, Ms. Rachel, you will let me know, and Ms. Edmund, the men use the term parental alienation to get at the mother, which I consider the victim under domestic violence. Am I right or am I wrong with that?
Okay, well, first we have to define what parental alienation is, right? And parental alienation is intentionally withholding the child or access to the child to the parent that is non-custodial, right? So it's an intention. That's the first thing you have to understand. We are not intending. Now, it doesn't have to be for a long period of time that you are withholding the child. It just means you have to, that is your thought. I want to do this. I'm not going to allow him to see the child for whatever reason, frivolous or not, right? Now, if it is you are in a situation where, for example, you have been abused or so, or let me use this better example. The non-custodial parent has a date for visitation and access to the child, right?
Yeah.
Everything is going fine. However, whatever happens in his life, the date that is his, it's assigned to him, let's say the second weekend of the month, right? That weekend he's supposed to collect the child. The following weekend would be the mother's and so forth, right? He does not come for his visitation on the second weekend. He does not come to get the child to take him to his home and that sort of thing. He does not come. The following weekend, it is the mother's weekend, right? She said, so he comes to her and says, now, okay, well, I come for the child, but it's not your weekend. It's my weekend. So then how can you come now to say it's your weekend and then you're now going to the court because you are saying I am alienating you? Yeah. I haven't alienated you. You have breached the order of the court.
Yeah.
Right? And so a lot of times that is what is happening. You are not coming for when you say you're supposed to come, or you're just showing up after months of not seeing the children and expect that, the woman is supposed to bend to your will because you say so, because you're named father. Yeah. It does not work like that. The court outlines the best options in terms of visitation and access for the child.
Yeah.
Whether it is twice a month, 3 times for the month, or joint custody or whatever it is, right? The court does that. You agree to it. And then now you want to make a change without informing the other parent, deliberate or not.
Yeah.
You didn't inform the other parent, or you make up some excuse or whatever. So it cannot be classified as parental alienation. It can't, right? If you are in the situation where you haven't seen the child for 4 months and you have actively been seeking to see your children, then in that case, that is parental alienation.
Yeah.
Right? And that is, I'm using it loosely because we are not taking into account in that definition that I just gave that there is violence and all of that involved, where the woman may be hiding or whatever, right? So we're not taking that into account. I'm just saying, this is what it is. These are the parameters. But there are other things, as I said earlier, that must be considered when you're talking about parental alienation. And usually when they go to court,
Mm-hmm.
the judge hears all sides of the case and determines whether or not I don't believe that we have a specific law that governs alienation. I think
Mm-hmm.
that is a fairly new um, thing that has been occurring that they are looking at or probably would look at, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that we have cases. I mean, sorry, we don't have a specific law to deal with that. One of the things that just came to my mind was that, when parents leave the jurisdiction,
Mm-hmm.
that is considered parental alienation,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Because there's no way for the other parent to get access. That is alienation.
So
Then
that
you
is,
cut all ties, no
yeah.
no phone access, no
Mm-hmm.
nothing,
Mm-hmm.
or
But
access is very limited.
but
You could use social media or whatever, but
mm-hmm.
you know, so it's a lot to consider, and I don't think that a lot of the cases that where persons allege
Yes,
alienation are in fact alienation.
I agree with you. Miss Mohammed, she indicated, she just stated that sometimes, well, under the Convention on the Rights of a Child and there's the International Child Abduction Act, when a parent take a child out of the jurisdiction, there's no contact. I am not too sure, but from what I've read, that the International Abduction Act, it doesn't have to be an international act. It can be done right here in Trinidad and Tobago. Have you had cases or have any knowledge of where women maliciously and intentionally remove the children from the household or deny them, well, access and use, I'm not going to ask say your NGO, but have you heard of cases where they use an institution as a form to escape, not from violence, but just to remove alienated children from that, from the, well, let's say maternal home, marital home, my apologies.
Uh, to answer your question directly, the organization that I represent, we haven't had any such cases.
Mm-hmm.
However, in a personal capacity, I am aware of one case. It's not a mother though, but it's a father
Mm-hmm.
that intentionally had the child removed along with himself from the country in a bid to um, break that parental tie, and to forego what the court system was trying to put in place for shared custody of the child. Um, Sadly to say, he was able to leave the country. The mother, she still would have tried to locate the child. I think eventually she did. Um, but I can't speak more on it because, again, for the betterment of privacy.
Privacy
But
and
yes,
consent.
there are cases, far more cases than we want to admit, where this is happening. Um, Most times it comes across in such a way that we're not even aware of what it
Hmm.
is that's happening. And the parent who is the gatekeeper of the child, or the coaching mechanism of the child, um, they put the children in a different mindset, under a different emotion, and the child tend to develop a distaste, a disrespect for the other parent, not understanding fully what is happening. And then now you have not just the fact of alienation, but you have the fact where the child becomes a product of emotional abuse, because that falls under emotional abuse. And then you have the breakdown in communication, because the child grows distant and apart from the other parent,
Mm-hmm.
thinking that the other parent has deserted them,
Yeah.
not understanding the situation at length, nor are they privy to the conflict that is happening between the both parents, that
Mm-hmm.
is taking a broader picture that is way bigger than the child. So again, it's complex. it's a touchy
Yes.
topic.
Yes.
And while we define alienation and all of that, you have to actually, each case is different.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Each case presents itself differently. So we can't take a, a specific approach to it, but you
Mm-hmm.
have to treat with it as it presents itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm saying that to say this, until we find a clinical intervention to deal with situations like this, it's going to be a recurring incident where we don't quite know how to fix it because it's difficult in parental alienation
Mm-hmm.
to disprove that it's
Mm-hmm.
happening.
Yes.
It is difficult to prove that it's actually happening. And when it is proven, it's difficult to find solutions because it's not just about the child, but the child is just a product. Access to the child is just a product of what is happening around the child. So those three things are to be considered. It's difficult to prove. Um, Even if it's proven, how do we find solutions, the right solutions for the best interest, not just for the child, but the emotional and mental well-being of both parents? And
Mhm.
those are the things that we have to consider. So NGOs like ours and the government agencies, there's a lot of work to do. We just started to tip the iceberg with discussions like these.
Yeah.
So
Because
it's something that, like I said before, it's a touchy topic.
yes.
And until we find, there are things that we could see, but then we will be held accountable for what we
Yes.
see.
Yes. Indeed.
So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, like it's baby steps we're taking, so we get there.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get
Mm-hmm. Because one thing I often ask myself, and Ms. Edmund, you could attest to this. While you and I were in the process of custody access, you and probably myself, our main goal was securing the welfare of our child. At one point in time, did you see the state agencies addressing our concerns as we are seeking the welfare of our children, or were they approaching us as though we were alienating our children, or our child in my case, from the other parent?
Yeah. In my case, I would have been treated like a common criminal. I would say I felt that's how I felt. I'm not saying that's how they treated me. I'm saying that's how it came across, and that's how I felt. Because there were different instances of different incidences and all sorts of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't appear to um, be on my side per se. Not that there are sides to be taken, but in terms of, okay, this person is bringing an allegation to the court saying X, Y, and Z, and it's as though I have to prove my innocence.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's not an alleged. It's like it's already
Crime.
fact, and
Mm-hmm.
that was something that left a really bad taste in my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
I do think though that the agencies that are um, responsible for protecting the welfare of the child, I think a lot of them, they do have a lot of work to do, but I also think that they are very overworked because the system is very disjointed. It's not working as efficiently as it should. Um, you know, we are now just getting a voice in terms of what single mothers are doing, because I've been in this area for the last 7 or 8 years, right? And I've been advocating consistently for changes to be made, because there are a lot of things that can be done better. There are a lot
Mm-hmm.
of things that have not been considered. There are a lot of things that need to be put on the table at this point in time. So I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't say that they were all bad and whatever. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, my situation happened my daughter is now 24, turning 24 this year. So it was some time ago, but I did spend 10 years in the in the
Ooh,
system,
wow.
right? So yeah, so it did, in that time frame to now, a lot of changes have been made in terms of protecting children. A lot of laws have been implemented, and hopefully they do work. But again, the agencies, a lot of them are disjointed, they disconnected,
Yes, please.
and they are overworked because they
Mm-hmm.
just don't have enough personnel to do all the work.
Mm-hmm.
Over the COVID, in terms of domestic violence and all of that, um, the honorable minister, she stated that those cases, those incidents of domestic violence more than doubled, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which means that children were
Yes,
not
yes,
protected
yes,
because
yes.
they would have been seeing things that would have been happening, and there were persons, I think, who were murdered and all of that. So, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but again, we cannot leave everything, or blame everything on the state agencies and all of that, because in terms of human behavior, you cannot legislate that. You can't go in somebody's house and say, well, don't hit the man, don't hit the woman. You can't do that. You can only provide the framework and the confines within people should behave and operate, right? And it's up to them now to um, stay within those confines, or risk whatever penalty the law would allow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a lot of, we have to consider a lot of different things when we are having all of these great conversations, because it's not a black and white thing. There are a lot of gray areas. There are a lot of um, different conversations that have to be had, right? Because again, I always say there's a lot of intersectionality in the things that we do as an NGO. We have domestic abuse, we have the rights of the child, we have women's rights, we have a whole lot of different things that we as an organization have to deal with, because when these people come to us and they want advice, those are the areas that we often have to advise them in,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's a lot that we have to do still. I think one of the things that we need to also be looking at is the state agencies need to know exactly where they need to be going in terms of
Mm-hmm.
the how they become more efficient. And I think one of the ways that they can do that is by partnering with NGOs such as yourself, myself, the Justice for Women's Foundation, and others that are in existence, right? Partnering with them to create the programs and the changes that we need. We need to have proper consultations. A lot of times we are not considered for anything. We are not considered in terms of, well, what are your thoughts on? Yes, they have consultations. I know they have consultations, but it's only, to me, like, the people that really need to be represented are not, right? So those are my thoughts on that particular issue.
Ms. Mohammed, could you or would you say that the state agencies are doing enough to protect a child and mother?
Every time I'm asked this question, I'm a bit hesitant to answer.
You don't need to.
It is never enough. However, given the human resources that we have, I think
Yeah.
that they are doing the best that they can. If you look at the job spec that comes behind being a social worker, being a psychologist, being a child advocate, and all of that, it is not a field that not very many people are willing to go into for the passion of it. Most people who go into it goes for the monetary gains. I'm being very blunt here. So while there are human resources, the compassion that and the empathy that drives these portfolios, it isn't there. So you will find that not much result, or the type of results that we want to see is coming forward as fast as we want to see it. So now you find that birthing of NGOs like yours and Miss Edmond and like mine, the one that I represent, we sort of come in to sort of soothe and pacify what the government agencies falter. However, we are doing it from our own resources, and it isn't enough.
Yeah.
It isn't enough.
Yeah.
Even when you ask for government subventions and you ask for government input, um, to meet the criteria that they're asking for, sometimes it's way, way out of respect that you're representing. Not only that, if you do get it, it isn't enough to help who you want to help the most.
Yeah.
And these are the things that we need to look into. Thus, for children, authorities doing the best that they can in terms of the child line, the support groups. But I think where they're missing the mark is actually having that one-on-one without the court monitoring a child. Because when we get down into the nitty-gritty of court, children tend to be more reserved. And until they are in an environment where they could actually understand and be a bit more at ease, it is difficult to lend aid to a child that you don't know how to help. So that is one of my major concerns with regards to that. I think that the school system, um, there should be much more social support there, and it's evident we're actually seeing how the deterioration in the social interaction of children, how it's affecting us, how it's affecting the children that is within the school system. And I think that is an area that they need to focus into. I noticed TTPS started an initiative.
Yeah.
Um, my only thing with that is they're starting at the secondary school level, and I think interventions should be made from the preschool up.
Yes, please. Always
The
the
old
same.
people have a saying, it is difficult to bend a tree that is already bent, but you could shape a tree that is now in light of growing from small. So that is my only take on that. However, I do commend them for the efforts that are being made. I also noticed the list that they put out last week is not the problematic schools that needs to be at. So my thing is, if you're doing an initiative as such, you go where the problem is. You go where the problem is. And that is one of my takeaways from that as well. To revert back to your question, um, they're not doing enough, and there are a lot of contributing factors to that. However, we can strike a balance. And I'm saying this boldly. There are so many NGOs in Trinidad that is passionate about social work, that is passionate about making interventions and lending aid. At the Justice for Women Foundation, we don't have a wealth of resources, but you know what? We have a team of people that is passionate to get you the help that you need. You come to us through the SOS initiative, and we don't have the resources to help you. We try to find the interventions. We try to guide you along the path. However, most times we have to depend on government agencies, and we all know how that works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But looking at parents, is it that parents has a parent has a responsibility to ensure that their child is developed physically, mentally, morally, and socially. Because sometimes children may act out in school because they're not allegedly not seeing their daddy or not seeing their mommy. And I'm of the view, I mean, that's, you could differ if you wish, or let me get a better understanding. I am of the view that The state, as you said, you start from the early stages. The state agency, namely the education division or sections or department or ministry, you are seeing a child, let's say at preschool, acting out, and you get to discover that there are some issues which at the home where mommy or daddy isn't there. Is it fair to say that at that let's say primary school, standard three going up, do you think it's fair to say that the education should take a new responsibility? We know they have the social workers, we know they have the guidance counselors. Could we say that they should now start helping these children, as you say, don't wait until they're too old to bend it? Is it that we could say that the divisions of education in Tobago and the Ministry of Education in Trinidad should start to deal with children who are acting out, especially if there's parental conflict, parental violence, or allegations of parental alienation? Do you think the education system should intervene?
It has to be a collaborative effort. The education system cannot fix it. They don't have the resources, nor are they equipped to fix such issues. However, uh, they can lobby with other government agencies, the social support system, um, the there's the mediation center as well. So at some point, we have to understand that we can't do it on our own. However, if one entity, take for instance the education, because most times it's a teacher that actually picks up on a child's behavior when a parent miss it or a parent is just oblivious of the facts. So because between school and home, most times a child will spend like what, 8 hours in school, and then when they get home to the parents, sometimes if a parent is working and all of that, there are things that the parents will miss. But a teacher tends to pick up on stuff. So this is where the collaborative effort comes in. Get into um I always wanted to ask this question. Is it that in the school system there are consultations with parents when things like this happen? And if it is that there are consultations when behaviors like that come up, how do they come together to treat with it? So again, there has to be collaborative efforts. The Ministry of Education, the Community Development and the Mediation Center should get involved as well. I don't think within the school there is a support system for parents who are having difficulties with their parenting skills and all of that. I think somehow that should be integrated in the PTA system as well. It's just a suggestion. Um, because we talk academics and we talk everything else, but we don't address the emotional intelligence aspect of it. And that takes a lot, that contributes a lot to how a child is being raised, to the etiquette and the social interaction, self-regulation, and all of that that a child displays. If a parent, however, is having difficulty with their EI skill sets or not even aware of their EI skill sets, how can they contribute positively to a child's well-being in that regard? So there has to be a balance in academics, there has to be a balance in EI skills as well. And I've been saying this for years. We teach everything, but we don't teach EI in schools. It is dependent on you when you become an adult to want to expand on that. And it's one of the fundamental things that determines the type of individual that you are and how much you contribute, not just to yourself, but back to society. It determines the type of relationships that you foster as well. So those are the things that need to be considered moving forward.
So I just want to add that the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, that is the name of the ministry, right? Therefore, everything that is relative to families falls under their purview, right? They are supposed to be leading the charge in terms of having their services more integrative and having their services reach more people or reach people that really need their services, right? They have a lot of services that are available to families and stuff like that. Now, in terms of children who are acting out in schools and all of that, that is where the ministry, again, as I said, needs to take the lead, because the first thing they need to have a conversation with the Ministry of Education, right? Because the children is in school. So you have a conversation with the Ministry of Education, because most times, as Rochelle said, the teacher is the one that picks up on what's happening in the school. The child doesn't have to be fighting or anything like that, but they could be having challenges or issues, right? So when they have that conversation with the Ministry of Education, then you can create a solution for the child, right? All schools do not have social workers or um,
Guidance
guidance
counselor.
counselors. Not all schools have them, and all schools should.
Yes.
All schools should have guidance counselors, and of course the social workers who will come in from time to time, right? They don't have, a lot of schools don't have that as an option, right? So the children don't have an option. They don't have somebody who they can be referred to talk. And the next thing that I wanted to say is our society is built on punitive measures of control, right?
Yes. Yes.
We are not a society that is built on rehabilitation or um
Restorative
or
justice, even restorative justice. We don't practice that
exactly
there. We
right.
don't
They're
practice
not, we are not there yet, because we are only, a child does something, okay, you need detention or you need suspension. No, we have to get into what is going on. Why would you be suspending a child for acting out, if, especially if the child didn't have any like physical altercation or whatever? Let's say the child backtalk the teacher or something, or cuss up the teacher, something like that, right? No, nobody was injured, no fighting took place. Why the child? Why you punishing the child? You're not getting to the root of the problem, right? Yeah, and also, as Rochelle said again, the PTA needs to be involved. It needs to be these things, these conversations that we're having relative to children, relative to families, relative to domestic violence. All of these conversations is not. It will take a multi-sectoral approach to doing what needs to be done, because it's not just one area of your life that is impacted. It's several areas which will cross, or in some cases may cross into different areas, right? So mental health, you will need some sort of counseling. So again, Rochelle said mediation and all those things. I agree totally with everything that she said, because those are the areas that we pay little attention to. We're having conflict in the home. Where is the mediation, right? I think a lot of times mediation is done for like persons who are married or were married or whatever, although it is available for anybody. But it's more a suggestion for when you are married, right? When you have that dynamic at play. So what happens to the person who living with their family and the father living in another area and things like that? But they're having conflict. The court is the one who is supposed to advise and recommend mediation or whatever non-punitive measure to help the family, because the end result is what you want to have in the end is the family unit. Even though it's not the conventional unit, you want to have the family together. You want to have the family operating as a unit. You want to have parents co-parenting properly. It takes a village to raise a child. I firmly believe that the village that we used to have no longer exists, but we can improve upon the village concept. because we know what does not work in the village. Silence in the village when it comes to abusing children does not work in the village, right? All those different things, that those negative things that affect children, they don't work. So we know what doesn't work, but we also know what does work. But we're doing it in silos,
Yes.
right? So we have to come back to the concept, improve upon the concept of raising the child through the village. So you have in the child having issues at school, so the social worker or the guidance counselor will come in, have sessions with them, whatnot. You have NGOs working in particular areas that children can benefit from their expertise, knowledge, and the services that they offer. You bring them in, you consult with them, you create that change that you want to have, the change that you want to see. But as again, we want to punish for everything. So we are not going to get anywhere. We see something happening, okay, we need a law for that.
Yes, you're correct.
So
Because
it's not going to work.
as you use the frame, the punitive term, I remember I am telling a judge I was 3 minutes late because the child didn't want to go to the father. I was committed to prison for 7 days. I was fined $7,000. I was instructed to pay the father's legal fees, as well as I was instructed forcefully to hand over the child to the father while I was incarcerated if I failed to pay the fine. And that kind of measure to me, not just unlawful, but it was so punitive to the point where the child was being affected. That judicial officer, for me to seek redress and to deal with that situation, I had to make an application to the Court of Appeal for them to hear my plight, for them to hear my case. Luckily, the learned judge was removed. I am saying other parents can't do that. At the bottom of it, while I experienced that Court of Appeal journey, I felt as though my child was being punished. On the same instance I mentioned before, when my child was made a ward of the court because of allegedly missing, I was punished by my child being placed in a home. But the bottom line at the end of the day is not me being punished, it was the child. But under the Convention on the Rights of a Child, these state agencies, the Family Court Division of the High Court, Children Authority, and the Child Protection Unit, they have a mandate to ensure our children are protected. And for today, we are seeing where children they're so vulnerable that the state agencies working with the protective system and the administrative system called the Court and Children Authority are not seeing that when a parent is trying to protect their child, they will go at any length. But when a parent is alleging parental alienation, I ain't seen my child and already private want access to my child. One of my colleagues asked a question earlier on. If it is that you are seeking or are making allegations you're not seeing your child access being denied, or aka parental alienation, are you working with the other parent, whether it be the mother or the father, to ensure that your child's health is sustained, the child's safety is maintained, and the child's well-being is supported? Because often we have seen where children are forced into environments that they don't want to go into, or it is not fit. But because we have, as Edmund just stated, a punitive system that is only there to punish one parent, they are not seeking the best interest of the child. And I remember one day I'm asking the question to a judge, are you really seeking my child's interest? And she wanted to put me out of the courtroom. And when we as parents try or make attempts to raise issues and concerns, we are being told that we are alienating our children from the other parent.
Yeah.
I remember on one occasion, not one, many occasions, for months, every time my child goes for access, she's coming back with something called upper respiratory tract infection. The access stopped the Saturday night, it had to resume the Sunday morning. And when that Sunday morning came, and there are days I'm at night actually, I'm at the hospital 2 a.m., 4 a.m., 4 a.m. And while I am in the hospital waiting, phone rings. Miss Clark, the father was charged by the police station. Why aren't you bringing the child? I said, but we're in the hospital. But mommy have a court order. The father can maintain the child after. The father can see about the child's health after. And I am concerned because at the end of the day, when the father's access is finished, the child has to be returned into my care again. I, on the other hand, was trying to seek and to ensure that my child's health is taken care of. So I'm going back to the question to both of you ladies, and Ms. Clark, I'll ask you eventually. Do you think that both parents are really seeking their child's health, safety, and well-being? Are they seeking that child's interest?
Not in all cases, no. Sometimes women want to just punish the man for whatever reason. There are those cases. I've never come across one, but I've heard persons, share with me stories about family members or friends that they would have had who would have had those experiences. Yes. But I don't think that, we are at a point where we can say that that is something that is prevalent. I think those cases are in the minority.
My guess it is, yes.
Right? I literally do think that because of the fact that we have so much violence in the home, right? We have so much violence in the home that these children are in the middle of it. They will see it. They are experiencing it themselves, right? Sometimes it's not just the other parent that would have been experiencing the violence. It would have been them too, right? So I don't think that there's a lot, as I said before, there's a lot that we have to consider when we are talking about alienation.
Yes.
It's not, to me, it is not a clear-cut case of, okay, this person doing this, that, the other, and yes, that's alienation. You have to look at everything, all the factors, everything that's happening, and make an assessment of each case individually.
Yes,
right? You have to do that because one size does not fit all. Every person is different. Everybody, each family unit is different. Everybody, each structure differently. So it's for us now to be observant. We have to be open-minded. One thing I wanted to say is that a lot of times when you go to court, the courts are very disrespectful. They are very disrespectful to you as a person, a petitioner coming to the court. They don't hear you. They tend to talk down to you as if you're some 5-year-old that can't understand because you don't have a law degree.
Yes. Yes.
They belittle you.
Yes.
A lot of times, I remember I was sitting outside of a court waiting for my matter to call, and this gentleman came out crying. When I saw the gentleman, I had to think twice because the gentleman was probably over 60, and this lady judge was literally shouting. I told you I was outside of the court waiting because inside was full, and she was literally shouting at the man and telling him, "Hush him out! I am the judge here," and what and what and what. And the man came out crying. And I mean to say, a lot of people have the experience of going to court. That's why a lot of people don't go to the court because they don't want to experience that. They rather, okay, whatever, yes, whatever the situation that they would have been enduring, whatever. It's too much. And court can be very draining.
Yes.
You know, it can be, especially when you have a matter extending over a year, 2 years, 3 years, it can be very draining, right? Um, you had mentioned something about when you went to court and stuff, and it reminded me of one time that I did go to court as well, not on children related issues, but this person, I was assaulted, I was a victim, I was assaulted, right? And I couldn't take the going back and forth, and I said, you know, I spoke to the prosecuting officer, and I said to him, you know, it's taking a toll on my mental health. And he was very understanding. He said, okay, no problem, I will address the court and all of that. And the judge literally told me, you can be arrested for wasting the court's time. And I was like, but I am the victim.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't beat up myself. So there are a lot of things, a lot of changes that
Yeah.
need to be happening. But the thing is, a lot of people tend to think that because there's not a lot of chatter around things in the public domain, that it doesn't really happen like that.
A taboo topic, I call it.
You understand? And even things like people say, oh, well, the court is for the woman. The court is not for the woman.
No.
The court is for the one who presents the best case.
Yes, please. And not just that, the one who has influence and connection.
That too. Because a lot of times things go, you have everything, you know, you have all your ducks in a row, and still the judgment goes against you. So it's just, our system is not where it's supposed to be, where it should be.
Could you
And
say, the judicial system is not where it should be? Because the judicial system is where everything falls down in Trinidad and Tobago. Because everything we have to go through the court. You want money from the man or the woman, go through the court. He slap you, go through the court. Whatever it is. Sometimes I see parents have to go to court because one wants to take a child to the country, they end up in court for that. And
yeah,
Ms. Rochelle, you were saying, I don't know if I heard you right, these state agencies need to work along the NGOs to help maybe bring about change. They are not doing that.
And that's the thing. We have developed a culture that everything has to be fixed through the court system. And we don't promote mediation.
Yes.
And a lot of positive things come out of mediation because both parties get to share their side of the story. Now, in terms of behavior and all of that, a father, I'm saying a father, but it happens with females as well, mothers as well. He will go to the extreme. And we have seen that with this particular case that was highlighted earlier, because he feel that he's not being heard. He feel that he's not having his say in this situation. And while he went about it the wrong way, if one wants to be fair, one could understand why he feels victimized to that extent. But at the end of the day, had mediation taken
Yes.
place, it may not
Yes.
have gotten to that point.
Yes.
And the courts tend to pass down judgment without mediation and intervention. And a lot can be fixed without mediation. And I always tell persons who come to our organization, even we have a legal rep on board, and she would also say it as well. Before you go down that road, mediation is free through the Mediation Center in Trinidad and Tobago.
mm-hmm.
There's consultations. There's, if for some reason the services that they provide isn't sufficient enough to help you in your case, they will provide you with alternative resources.
Yes.
And I think that's what we have to advocate for. That's what we
Yeah,
have to keep pushing
Yes.
and change the culture, change the dynamic that everything has to be told to you what to do and documented on a legal document.
yeah. And like you were saying
Consultation
earlier,
is
Rochelle,
viable. Sure.
sorry. Well, I was going to say, like you were saying earlier about teaching emotional intelligence, right? When you have mediation, it allows you to problem solve. So
Mhm.
in the future, you would be able to look at whatever situation is presented to you and tap into that emotional intelligence that you have built and make a wiser decision.
Miss Clark, Miss Chanel
And
Clark,
that's
not a real.
that's exactly what I'm trying to say. Because there are two things that we need to focus on: conflict resolution and
Mm-hmm.
emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these things are actually taught. I don't know how many people know this, but every year the Ministry of Community Development runs a cycle teaching the basics of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And one has the court not going to come to tell you to do a conflict resolution course. They're not going to come to tell you do an emotional intelligence course. One has to take it upon themselves to decide this is where I lack. And self regulation and self introspection is very important. Being a parent, I am not a parent, but this is what we promote at the foundation. When you become a parent, these are things that you have to consider. How well is my emotional intelligence? How well is my conflict resolution skills? How well is my communication skills? How well do I receive feedback and treat with it in the manner in which it's supposed to be treated with? And we tend to say communication, communication, but communication without an understanding or understanding the essence of feedback is pointless. Because you could communicate something to me, Miss Edmond, and if I don't provide a viable feedback for what you said, and misconstrue everything that you say, and then nothing gets taken from the conversation, from the level of communication. So
Yeah.
we had to step out of the culture that we're in, that communication is all, communication isn't all, and this is
Yeah.
where the breakdown of things come in. We tend for the court to do the communications for us, and the
Mm-hmm.
court to decide when we ourselves have the power with the interventions of mediators to sit down and amicably resolve the situation for all parties involved. Now, there are cases where it cannot be done through mediation and the court intervention is necessary, but that
Mm-hmm.
should be the last
The
resort
last
after
resort. Yeah.
evaluation and
Ah.
consultation. But
Mm-hmm.
mediation should always be first because most times when a woman goes to court, she wants custody for the child. They just set a hearing date,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody says, neither of the lawyers, not even the presiding judge or magistrate, says, well, here what? Let's try mediation first.
Yeah.
Most times you would only hear mediation come in when there's a divorce battle and for some big estate or something like that in the midst of it, and you would hear things coming out. But in terms of custody hearing and maintenance and all of that, you don't need the court to tell you to pay $200 every week. You sit
But
down with the child's parents, work out
Yeah.
the budget for the child, understand the dynamics, understand the needs of the child, and take it from there. And I also say
Mm-hmm.
this to parents: mediation with one on one parents is important, but mediation and involving your child in the
Mm-hmm.
discussion once they're at an age that they could absorb and they could decipher information given to them so that it helps them understand what is happening. Most times children are left out in the loop and
Yes.
they absorb the energy of the tension
Mm-hmm.
in the home and they act out.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
However, if we involve them in the mediation aspect, we involve them into the consultation aspect, we sit down and we have dialogue, we have conversations with feedback and we listen. You would notice a difference in their attitude. You would
Yeah.
notice a difference in how they present themselves, how they articulate themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But these are things that we need to promote as organizations as ours because the court's not doing it. I mean, there are entities that have been saying it for years,
Yeah.
psychologists that have been promoting it and making recommendations for years, and the culture still remains the same. So I think it's a heavy burden for us to carry, but we have
Mm-hmm.
the passion, we have the dedication towards it. And if we do it as best as we can with the resources that is available to us, change could happen. Change
Yes.
would happen. It's going to be a long, dreaded process because we're trying to change the culture, but
Mhm.
it is worth it because children lives would be impacted positive.
And you're so correct. You hit the nail on the head, Miss Mohammed. Because while you were speaking, I was reflecting, and I remember the first hearing. I realized nothing I'm going through. Second term, when my child was placed in the home, first question I asked, could I have counseling for my child? And I tried it for 3 years, but because the court made my child a ward of the court, I was prohibited from child advocates from the Office of the Solicitors General. And they, even though they were allegedly or so-called, I call them the so-called child advocates for my child, neither of them recommended mediation. Not three of them in every instance never mentioned counseling for the child. And if you see there's a conflict between both parents, Ms. Mohammed, you are so correct. There is nothing wrong with mediation. But as my colleague and I often ask ourselves, is it that the court love to see matters going on, prolonging? Because my matter has been before the court 8 years. A decision hasn't been made, a hearing date hasn't been set, nor a trial date. Many trial dates vacated. And only 2022, my matter started in 2014, only in 2022, the third learned judge, which have been before two other judges, has decided that Ms. Clark, this is what the intervention for the child. Psychological assessment, psychological therapy, whatever therapy the child needs. And to date, my child hasn't received it. And I am asking myself, are these state agencies inclusive of the children's authority, inclusive of the court system, and inclusive of the Office of the Attorney General? Are they under the Convention on the Rights of a Child as a state entity? Are they seeking children's best interest? So I will ask Ms. Chanel Clark, the social work student, based on your observation as a student and listening to things on the public forum, give us an insight of your understanding if you are seeing where the state agencies are seeking the best interests of children.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Um, in regards to
You're a little low.
children, hello, hello,
We need a little more volume.
can you- hello.
We need, well, go ahead. We need some volume though.
Okay, so can you repeat the question?
We're not hearing you clear.
Can you repeat the question?
No, I was saying, looking at state agencies' function in seeking children's best interest, inclusive of the Children Authority, inclusive of the Child Protection Unit, inclusive of the judiciary. As a social work student coming into the field of work of social work, are you seeing that these state agencies are meeting the mandate of the Convention on the Rights of the Child in seeking a child's best interest?
To be honest, I don't believe much is being done because I am a victim of um, being abandoned by the system, I would say, because I would have lost my parents at an early age. And I can't remember one time being given an opportunity to receive counseling or any other services from the country. You know, my sister and I would have discussions and we would reiterate different things we would have been through. And I could remember a social worker used to come from time to time to visit us. And he would come and he would ask questions about us and school and everything. But no one never really looked deeper to say, well, these children probably need counseling, you know, and you see, we grow with that, and then, you know, as we are adults now, and we would look back, and even when I made the decision to enter into the social work arena, this is one of the reasons why I actually had the interest, because I'm looking at what is taking place, and from the outside looking in, you are seeing that there are many other strategies and interventions and different things that could be implemented, but nothing is being done. I mean, there are persons who may have the idea and they are afraid to step out into the light, So I don't think it boils down to the best interest of the child. Most times, in most cases, as some of the clients would tell us when we come into the insurance, or we're following the book too much. I think they're just going by the law and what needs to be done. But if you really look at some of the choices that are being made, sometimes it's not in the best interest of the child. Because you would ask yourself, are these people professionals? Because they're supposed to know. Once you are informed, you should be able to make an informed decision. And as professionals, they are supposed to know when a counselor needs to step in, when different measures need to be taken. And to be honest, from my experience, I don't think that uh, more needs to be done. More needs to be done. Because had I have received my counseling back then when I was about 8 years old, I believe that based on my present situation, I would have been in a better place. And a lot of things are still affecting me back then, that I would get up on a daily basis and I would still try to ignore what I would have been through and just try to move on, because that I would have already gone through it. So more could be done. And my goal is really to, when I get into the system, to really apply myself to take on leadership positions, so that I will be in a better position to better help orphans and many other children that start experiencing different issues on a daily basis. Because as we speak, a child could be going through incest, a child could be going through many different things. And I don't think the authorities they are really taking the time to really investigate and step in and really hold people accountable for whatever crime they are being committed. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents on the whole system and everything.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. And you are on the outside, and soon to be you'll be on the inside. And I hope young social work students, like you may not be young in age, but new social work students and new social workers in the field, I hope that when you enter the field of work, you could bring an impact. You may get a little struggle, a little fight, a little bureaucracy, but please, we would like to see you, the younger ones, be the change. As we close, with Edmund,
Mhm.
if I could get a clearer understanding and in your own summary, do you think that much is being done by the state agencies in seeking the child's interest, starting from our family court coming all the way down? Could you I have to be careful when I ask questions, but I can't give recommendation, but could you give us at least one or two solutions you think that the state agencies can do to prevent, especially the violence, or shall I say, when children are exposed to parental violence, mommy or daddy hitting each other in front of the child, and the state agency has to intervene? Could you give at least one or two recommendations?
Okay, well, it's very simple for me in the sense that, in terms of whenever a case is presented to the court, whether it's maintenance, I want to get maintenance, or domestic violence, or whatever it might be, I think mandatory counseling and mediation should be something that is recommended. It should be on the table, because when you have the dissolution of a relationship, it affects the child,
Yes.
right? Whether it was there was violence or not in the relationship, it affects the child. So once somebody comes into the court and says, I want custody of this child, mandatory mediation, mandatory counseling,
I
those
agree.
things are going to affect the outcomes for everyone involved in a positive way, because you have mediation. The problems that parents experience within the court system, number one is the fact that they are not heard.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Their needs are not addressed.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times in mediation, the need that I want to say something or I want a particular outcome is not heard. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that situation where you have the mediator, you have the both parties involved, and you may have the child, you know, everybody will be able to get a sense as to what is affecting the other person, right? And then you can, because you are involved in mapping out the direction that you want to go into, what is the resolution, what is the solution, what is, you are involved in everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not just a court saying, okay, well, you need to pay that and you need to see the child 2 times for the week, right? You are involved literally in the process. So I would say those two things are two vital, very important things that can be implemented, or not implemented, but well, yes, implemented, because it's not mandatory, right? But they can be, what the existing structure now, it can be strengthened using those tools because they already exist. It's just that it's not mandatory.
Ms. Mohammed, could you give us at least 1 or 2 recommendations to alleviate the issue of parental violence, in your case, domestic violence, especially when children are I call them the third victim?
So I would have to agree with Ms. Edmond and everything that she would have said in context. To add to that as well, get children more involved. Because a child could say a lot. At the end of the day, a child has the ability to speak and to voice their concerns. And I think we overlook that part of it. I mean, us at the foundation, we see it from time to time. We see where there's the conflict between both parents and the child isn't being heard. And sometimes all it takes is for a child to be heard, for a solution to come. And there's where we keep saying, in terms of mediation, that should be the first thing. And the culture of the court system needs to change as being the first resort. Try mediation first, and if after exhausting all the resources where mediation is concerned, you don't find the appropriate result for all persons involved, then you get the court system involved. So that is my contribution. Again, I agree with everything that Ms. Edmond would have said. And my recommendation to add to that is get children involved.
Great. And well, the social work students, I will leave you out in this question, but I will give my 2 cents as to what recommendations I would like to see going forward. First, if a dispute or what's the term, dissolution of the marriage takes place, or well, can't say relationship because it's not really known in common law. If that takes place and both parties have attorneys, Ms. Mohammed and Ms. Edmond, I totally agree. The attorneys could ask for mediation before a hearing date. Secondly, if the matter is before the court, especially where a child is involved, whether it's maintenance, domestic violence, custody, or access, or combination of all, I would like to see a multi-sectoral approach in that no judge or no one individual should be making a decision over our family life. If it has to be a multi-sectoral approach, the input and the appearance of a mental health expert, a protective expert, meaning the police officer, someone from the education division or department, and the list may go on. And the reason being, having been exposed to the family court system in Barbados, whenever any family-related case is called, it's a room of experts from drug agencies, mental health institutions. So before a matter goes to the next hearing, which is 3 months, they are there to guide the magistrate There is domestic violence. You have the police officer to serve the interim restraining order right there in the court, not in the court, but to serve it thereafter. You have the counseling experts there. You have everybody right there. I have found, based on my experience and listening to the experiences of others, that our Trinidad and Tobago judicial system, namely the family court, they are not willing and they are not focusing on seeking the best interests of children. Recently, the story came about with children being placed in the homes, and who placed the children into the homes? The court system. And one of my last recommendations, as Ms. Mohammed added and Ms. Rochelle added, my take on it is, as soon as the matter starts before the court and the magistrate hears it, please ensure, magistrate or judge, and master of lately, please ensure that counseling starts with the first inception, especially if the child is affected, and mediation. Thank you, ladies. Ms. Clark, because we have a little slight feedback, I would like you to put on the mic at the moment, but on the other occasion, we'll probably have you with us. But thank you, ladies, for being here with us this afternoon. Thank you, Ms. Princess Jagannath and Ms. Kizia Woods, for being live on our live. Thank you. And as PAN go forward, we will be working with other NGOs, inclusive of the Women for Justice Foundation, inclusive of the Global Network for Advancement of Single Mothers. Because we are, as Ms. Mohammed said, we are just here with a cause and with a passion. And that passion is if we are the ones to help the government come to us. We are not afraid, because persons have lost interest, persons have lost faith in our state agencies because they are not seeking anyone's interest. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for being part of our session this afternoon called Parental Alienation. Indeed, it was a vague topic, but our main purpose was to focus on the child and how the term parental alienation is a broad topic, and how best we try to understand the termination. But it is a very difficult term, as Ms. Rachel indicated. But in future, we will have more discussions, and thank you for being here. Thank you, ladies. Have a pleasant night.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thanks much. Good night.
Good night.